Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call our meeting for the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, January the 7th to order. At this time, I'd like to welcome every one of you that is here today. Madam Clerk, on the roll call, all of the commissioners are present along with the county manager, and we are so glad to have Margaret back with us. Margaret, I don't know what to say. It's just been one of those experiences that nobody should ever have to go through, and I know that your Burke County family has been there right beside you every step of the way, and we still love you as always, but we are glad that you're back. We sure did miss you, Brian, with the loss of your mother also. We're glad that you're back with us. That was a hard December for our Burke County family, and you know that we certainly love you and admire everything you do for this county. Folks, if you would, check your devices that you have, silence all your mobile devices and your telephones, please, for me. And if you're a speaker today, when you come up here, be sure to activate the red button. At this time, gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
All right, all in favor, signify by raising the right hand. Madam Clerk, that's 5-0. Let's start with our presentations today. The first one, as always, we'll have Caitlin Settlemeyer, our Animal Services Director, to come up and introduce us to the pet of the month, or tell us about the pet of the month. Caitlin?
Hey, thanks. So we're going to have I guess it's our fourth pet of the month coming up. So we don't know who we're going to pick yet. Depends on who's at the adoption facility whenever those 2 weeks roll around. But we have quite a few to choose from. All of our other ones have been adopted or pulled to rescue. So we hope to be able to find a home for this next one.
Great. Give us a quick update for the holiday season. How did we do? Up, down?
We did fantastic. What we did, we opened up, we did a home for the holidays for our pets in the shelter. We had a huge turnout. We sent about 20 animals into foster homes, and about 15 of those got adopted. So, and then the other 5 are still being fostered, so they never re-entered back into the shelter. So we're still looking for homes for those animals, but it led to a really good turnout for those pets.
Great. Gentlemen, questions for Caitlin?
I could get a couple of those adopted.
Find some adopted families for you.
Record. Thank you.
Mr. County Manager?
Just wondering, is there any update on Cesar?
Cesar, yes, I just spoke to Ashley this week. He is awaiting sponsorship for his training. So last I heard, he was expected to graduate this month. For anybody who has not heard, he went to a rescue called Canines for Warriors. So he is being trained to be a service dog for a veteran who suffers from PTSD. From our very own, he was a stray dog just from Burke County. So it's a really neat program. We're looking at him graduating in January. If not January, it'll be February. So he's awaiting a sponsorship and a handler right now.
Fantastic. Anything else? Okay, hearing nothing, and without objection, this will remain on the agenda. Thank you, Caitlin. Moving on to item number 2 is recognition of Detective Christy Puckett for the Advanced Law Enforcement Certification, and that will be presented by Sheriff Steve Wisnut. Come on up, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir, and we always look forward to and appreciate the board allowing us to make these presentations. So we will be bringing her at the regular meeting, to present her with her advanced law enforcement certificate.
Questions or comments for the sheriff? As I always say, this is, being a holder myself, this is one of the greatest accomplishments that a law enforcement officer can do. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication and time to come up with this advanced certification, and everyone that carries that little pin that goes along with it is very proud of that. So we're proud of Christy, Sheriff. We appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
All right, without objection, this will remain on the agenda. Moving on to item number 3 will be a proclamation proclaiming January 2020 as National Mentoring Month, and that will be presented by Dorian Palmer from Big Brothers Big Sisters. Dorian?
Good afternoon. As you all know, I come here every year to present or to request this proclamation. I'm the current board chair for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Western North Carolina, covering from Burke to Swain counties. We served 3,016 children in 2018-2019 fiscal year. We served 40 here in Burke County.
Questions for Dorian on the proclamation?
Mr. Chairman, not on the proclamation, but
I had one quick question. The numbers on your report are really impressive, but I just wondered if that 3,016 in year 18-19, do you have them broken down in age groups, or maybe the better question is, what age group it gets the majority of those?
Sure.
that age?
So I don't have that information in front of me. I can certainly get it, but what we match kids from ages 6 to 14 and through their 18th birthday if they're already matched. So it's somewhere in that 8 to 12 year.
8 to 12 years.
But I can get you the exact numbers if you like, Mr. Taylor.
Well, that's a great number.
And the
3,016.
numbers on the report you have are slightly different because we actually served more last year. But I didn't get the numbers to Kay in time, so that was my fault.
Okay, good.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the agenda. Moving on to item number 4 from our Health Department will be presentation on the progress of the Burke County Recovery Court presented by Lisa Moore, our public health educator. Lisa.
Thanks. Okay, so I apologize, you did not get this ahead of time. This report was not finished. I might need a copy for myself. So this is the end of our first year of our federal grant with Bureau of Justice for our recovery court. So what you have are the grant requirements that we have to report on quarterly for the grant. And then I have some information on lead and in-jail services. We kind of lump all these together because it's a continuum of care. It's a system of care for these offenders that are in these programs. So I'm just going to go through this quickly with you guys, and then you can read this at your leisure. Part of the first part, of course, was getting our staffing on board. So we are fully staffed with our 2 peer support specialists. One is housed at Cognitive Connection, and the other one housed at Burke Recovery. And then our Burke Recovery Drug Court Coordinator, we have her on board, and everything is progressing very well with those individuals. Our drug court began in May of 2019 with our first court session. It is held every 2 weeks on Tuesday afternoon at the Annex Building at the courthouse. We have developed our drug management committee that provides oversight and management for the recovery court. So any policy changes, any procedural changes, any fiscal changes, all of that goes through that management committee. So that with Judge Irvin is by grant requirement, by general statute, and that is in place and ready to go. The goal number 3, as you see, and I'm not going to read that to you, but that is a very long list of all of the newly created and enhanced partnerships that we have to have drug court participants be able to have access to any other services besides recovery court. So that would include any social determinants of health, housing, transportation, food, any of those that they need. The drug court coordinator and the peer support case manage these individuals and make sure that they are hooked up with employment and housing and transportation to make sure that they can stay in that long-term recovery and treatment. So we have a long list of those individuals that we are working well with to meet this requirement. Goal number 4, our drug court coordinator along with our peer support specialist, anytime they're in the community, they are educating general public and our other stakeholders about recovery court, what it's about, our participants, how well we're doing, and the money and the recidivism rate and how that's saving the county. So anytime that she is out, she is talking about that and telling everyone so that this information can get out. We do and can take referrals from the community for this program. Usually we get them through law enforcement, DA, and the court system, but we can take some general referrals from the community. We have had some information in the newspaper. Hope that you read those articles from Johnny. He's been a great help and an asset to us to try to get the word out about recovery court and the participants. So the last couple things are going to give you some information about those participants. The goal and requirement for the grant was that we would have at least 20 participants each year of the grant. We have already surpassed that for our first year. We have 24 active participants and 2 pending. We have dismissed one because of medical reasons, so that was nothing that we could foresee, but that's the only one that has been discharged from the program. So the next one will be another 20, so that will be a total of 80 by the time that we are finished. If we stay on track where we are right now, we will probably have more than 80 participants by the time that this is finished. So we are hoping that that stays in that way. You'll see the treatment levels. When these individuals come from probation and they are put into the program, they are put in at different phases and different levels. This is why we have to have, they have to fall into criteria. And in the criteria, they have to be in probation long enough to fulfill some of these requirements, the treatment requirements. So as you see, the highest level, which we have 11 at the highest level, and that's 20 hours a week that they are in group or they in individual treatment. So it is a large requirement for them, time commitment along with going and meeting with their probation officer and other requirements that they have to meet. So these are really dedicated individuals that are really wanting to be in long-term treatment, long-term recovery. Then we have 13 that's in our second highest outpatient level, and then we have one that is in our lowest regular outpatient, which is 2 hours a week. So that is a breakdown of where they are. You will see on the next page you have a chart that just puts that in percentages as to what percentage is in which stage of the treatment. They will eventually move lower, like the highest level of treatment will move to the next and then move to the next until they are in long-term recovery. To date, we have no one that has reoffended, right, in a year. That's fantastic. Hopefully that will stay that way for the next several years that we have them in recovery court. So our case manager, she makes sure that those that are hooked up with resources within the community, she tracks those to make sure that they meet those resources where they are and when they need them. So she breaks those down if she takes them to a dental appointment, or if she makes those appointments for transportation, if she helps somebody get housing, if she helps them get employment. So the next graph just kind of gives you what resources were engaged in this first year for those participants and about how many. Any questions on recovery court? I know that was quick.
Great report, Lisa. Questions, gentlemen, or comments?
Okay.
Right.
The next couple of items talks about the other wraparound services with this continuum of system of care. Our first one is the front end of those offenders in the judicial system, and that would be our LEAD program, which is Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program. And we have approximately 12 participants that are right now engaged in that, and those are those low-level offenders that are not going to be charged as long as they stay in treatment and engaged in treatment. They will not be held on that drug charge. If at any point in time they do not comply with their treatment, then their charge will be reinstated. Next, we have our in-jail services, and that is through Catawba Valley Behavioral Health. They have right now, between September of 19 and December of 19, they have seen 90 inmates. 35 of them were accepted into the treatment program. They voluntarily wanted to go into the treatment program. 10 of them were transported to inpatient facilities for long-term inpatient treatment. 24 of them were referred to outpatient treatment while they are incarcerated. So this translates to a savings to the county of about $55,000 for those that go to inpatient. Catawba Valley Behavioral Health will go to the DA's office before they are put into jail. If they want long-term treatment, they will go to a treatment facility and stay there until their court date, which saves us from housing those in jail and paying for that. So they have already saved $55,000 with those 10 that they have housed in treatment. We also work in conjunction with the Population Health Grant at Catawba Valley Behavioral Health. That will assist a lot of these offenders with those social determinants of health long-term. So if they come out of any of these programs and they are needing assistance for long-term care, for housing and transportation, employment and such, this will coordinate part of that for them. So they have assisted 53 participants with 24 of them still active, looking for whatever it is that they need, fuel assistance, housing, transportation, whatever.
All right.
Any
You've heard
questions?
Lisa's report on
Comments?
that. Any questions or comments? Anybody? I think you gentlemen will certainly agree with me that drugs are a scourge and have been for a good long time in Burke County. And we've addressed that issue ourselves by becoming part of the opioid lawsuit that is still pending in Ohio. But on the local level, I think we have moved forward with every program, Lisa, that's available to us to provide treatment programs, either short-term, mid-term, or an extended period of time, and we do appreciate everything that's happened there. So if there's no other questions, without objection, I'd like to move this one to the consent agenda, because Health Department staff will be in Raleigh and will not be here to make this presentation, and I think it would be unfair for anybody else to try to make that except for Lisa's. So gentlemen, if you would entertain that for us to just move this to consent. Does anybody have any objection for that? All right, hearing none, Lisa, we'll move that to consent so you won't have to be here for that. If you'll move on into our next presentation, will be the presentation of the 2019 Community Health Needs Assessment.
So you have this in your packet. I hope you had a chance to look it over. And as you are aware, we have to complete a new one every 3 years. So this is our 2019 for the next 3 years. It is completed with a group of about 59 community partners representing about 35 agencies and community members who compile this over about a 1.5-year span. The group will now begin to work on our community health improvement plan around our identified priorities that we established at those meetings. As part of the primary data collection of the assessment, we had approximately 1,130 Burke County residents that completed the survey or participated in focus groups. Of those respondents, about 70% aged 18 to 54 strongly agreed that Burke County is a good place to live. 60% of those aged 55 and older strongly agreed that Burke County is a great place to be. Both of those percentages have increased since the 2016 assessment. The Wellness Initiative gathered all of this primary data and partial secondary data and went through a method called the Hamlin method, and that is to prioritize what we need to look at for the next 3 years. So out of that, we looked at the seriousness of the problems that were listed, the size of the problem, and the ability to evaluate the outcomes. So out of that, we determined the top 3 priorities that we're going to be working on with our community health improvement plan, which will be heart disease and stroke, substance use disorder, and COPD. So in the 2019 assessment, much of the demographic and economic measures, if you looked at those, stayed relatively the same from our 2016 assessment to our 2019. The estimated population was a slight increase, with the median age of 43.6 stayed the same from 2016. The 85 and older age group, of course, has steadily increased over the last several years. The poverty rate did decrease slightly from 19.9% in 2016 to 19.3% in 2017. Still, the largest percentage of those in poverty at 41.3% are those that are 5 and under. Burke County's median household income is $40,854, which is up from $37,086, which was noted in the 2016 assessment, but is still $9,466 lower than the North Carolina average. Our unemployment rate is lower at 4.9%, and we continue to exceed the state's graduation rate at 86.5 for the state and 89.8 for Burke County students receiving high school diplomas. Our residents born in Burke County between 2015 and 2017 have an estimated life expectancy of 76.4 years. The top 5 leading causes of death changed just ever so slightly. Our first 5 is heart disease, cancer, chronic lower respiratory diseases, all other unintentional injuries, and Alzheimer's. Unintentional injuries was not on the list in our 2016 assessment. Think due in part to a lot of the substance use disorder, and our unintentional overdoses was part of the reason why that has moved up to the top 5. So out of all of that, you have a big section that I hope you will read on our areas of success, and I'm very happy to talk about that. So since our 2016 assessment, we have received several large grants to reduce and address the substance use misuse epidemic within our county. We have the Drug Free Communities Grant, which goes through Burke Recovery and our BSAN group. And that facilitates multiple prevention efforts around underage drinking and misuse of prescription medications, as well as other substance use within the county. We received the first federal Department of Justice grant from Burke County for our recovery court, and that serves our high-risk, high-need adult nonviolent offenders voluntarily interested in participating in treatment and recovery services. Through BSAN and Burke County, we received another grant from Kate B. Reynolds Charitable Trust, and that is to begin and complete a 3-year comprehensive community strategic gap, needs, and asset analysis of the drug use and misuse challenge within Burke County. We then also received another federal grant from the Department of Justice for our Harbor Lead program, which is that pre-arrest community-based law enforcement lead diversion program to improve public safety and public order. We're also introducing Harbor, which is helping achieve recovery through Burke Opioid Use Reduction Program, and that is going to reduce overdose incidences and deaths, give low-level offenders opportunity to access treatment with long-term recovery support instead of criminal justice system, to help reduce recidivism rates and long-term costs to the taxpayer, and provide treatment and long-term recovery support, maximizing ability for those in recovery to reintegrate into community. We also opened a new state-of-the-art 264-bed jail to house all of our Burke County inmates locally and reduce transporting inmates to other jails and save money instead of renting bed space. A housing leadership team has been working to determine the extent of the housing issue in the county and develop ways to provide more permanent and rental properties for Burke County residents and those looking to relocate to our area. We still do have some areas of concern that we're going to need to be addressed as we move forward. Some of those are homeless population, substance use disorder, lack of housing, lack of affordable housing, and Medicaid transformation whenever that is implemented. So you have just a small snapshot of the information enclosed in the assessment, and I'll entertain any questions you may have.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard the report. Questions or comments for Lisa on the 2019 report? I would encourage you to go in and read this report. The meetings that Lisa held, I want to thank everybody that's on that committee. And you'll see a list in the back of this report of 40, 50 names. And every meeting we had, we probably had 30 people there for every meeting that we had. These people volunteered to come in, and they actually did a yeoman's work pulling together this information. We still have some things that we need to take a look at. But overall, I think the county's probably in better shape. A lot of numbers are better than they were in our last report, which I'm very appreciative of, and the people seem to be taking stock of what we're putting in these reports. People are trying to be a little bit more healthy. Again, I think if we look back in the report, we can fine-tune and pinpoint into substance use and substance abuse as one of the major contributors to this report on the sad parts of these reports. All right, again, without objection, since staff won't be here, I'm going to ask that this be moved to the consent agenda. It is on the website for people to take a look at, so if there is no objection to that, we'll move this over to the consent agenda. Hearing no objection, Lisa, those two reports, you folks have fun in Raleigh. Take care of us down there, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our scheduled public hearings. Our first one from Community Development will be ZMA 2019-10, public hearing. It will be presented by Scott Carpenter, Deputy County Manager and Planning Director. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here, and Happy New Year to all of you. This is a request that staff has received from Robert Parker, and he would like to rezone a 2-acre portion of an 11.35 acre lot. The request is to rezone that portion of property from its current zoning of R3 residential to the general business district. The property owner wishes to establish a furniture upholstery business at this location. As far as the site goes, the 911 address of the parcel is 2937 Warlick's Church Road, Morganton, North Carolina. The parcel has 2 small frame sheds on the property, according to the tax records. Otherwise, the land is vacant and wooded. The property has road frontage on Warlick's Church Road. However, the 2-acre area proposed to be rezoned can be accessed by way of a 30-foot private access easement which connects to that road. The property is located within the Eichard Township of Burke County, the Lake Hickory WS4 protected area water supply watershed. The parcel has a very small portion of floodway located in it. However, that floodway is not a part of the area to be rezoned. For the surrounding area, the land uses in the surrounding area are a mixture of residential, commercial, as well as agricultural uses. The parcels that adjoin the subject property are all zoned residential 3. Many of those adjoining parcels have dwellings on them. There are some parcels in the nearby area that are zoned general business as well. There is a church and several commercial businesses and warehouses located in close proximity to the subject property. There are also 2 parcels nearby which house poultry operations. And the neighbors are thrilled with the poultry operations, I've come to find out. As far as conformity with the comprehensive plan goes, the current land use plan for Burke County is the 2016 to 2030 Blueprint Burke Strategic Land Use Plan. And within that plan, the area of the county is designated as the secondary growth area. This area has many of the attributes of the primary growth area for infrastructure, utilities being nearby or in place, transportation corridors being available, as well as mixed uses in the area. We believe that this request is in conformance with that comprehensive plan that is in place. As far as conformity with the Burke County zoning ordinance, the current zoning district for this parcel is the R3 residential zoning district, and as you're aware, that is strictly for different types of residential structures and medium density activity. The request for what the applicant wants to do would not be allowed in that district, so it would need to be rezoned to general business. So the proposed zoning district is for general business, and that would allow him to do a number of different types of businesses. The applicant was asked and was encouraged to seek a conditional general business rezoning. And I'd like to let you know that the state changed some laws this year, so our conditional zoning will not be allowed shortly. So as we revise the zoning ordinance, which we're in the midst of doing right now, conditional zoning will go away. In its place, we will be putting in standards and recommendations that certain types of uses that come to the county will need to do, like A, B, and C if they're this type of business. So I just wanted to point that out to you. This is essentially a residential community for the most part. The location of the proposed zoning has both pros and cons. The proposed location of the non-residential zoning somewhat insulates it from the existing residential uses. So since it's all wooded surrounding it, it would basically be accessed by a 30-foot easement into the middle of the woods. However, access to the proposed location is by a 30-foot easement. As I said, this access road is currently not in place, and the county does not have specific requirements at this time in our zoning and ordinances that would require it to be built to a certain standard. So that brought up a concern, because if this changes uses or the activity increases, that road, whatever it is they might put in, may not be adequate. And since this 2-acre parcel is not fronting on the main road, DOT doesn't get involved with the egress and ingress of how traffic comes and goes out of this. So that was a couple of the concerns, as well as the parcels adjacent to the subject parcel. They are all zoned residential. So what makes this not a spot zoning? Well, when you start looking at the land use laws in the state, unfortunately, they've never been able to give any of the cities or counties a table that says, if you rezone to commercial or residential or industrial or whatever, then you need this size minimum lot to do it so that you're not a spot zone. Well, they don't have that. And so what we have done for many years is we use 2 acres as a minimum threshold for commercial, larger most of the time for residential. So as things get more intense, you might get bigger as well. Industrial, we look at 3 to 4 as a minimum to not be spot zoning. The applicant has provided a description of the proposed business. However, if the rezoning is approved, all uses within the general business district would be permittable. The existing access may not be appropriate for all allowed uses within the table of uses. And we are updating those standards in the new zoning ordinance for your consideration so that there would actually be standards for commercial egress and ingress out of properties. The access to the proposed area to be rezoned could be problematic for a commercial district if extensive road construction is not undertaken. So for the planning board meeting, the Burke County Planning Board met on December 5th, 2019 to hear this rezoning request. The 4-member board heard from staff of the facts in the case as they were presented. The board then heard from the applicant. The board then opened the meeting up for public comments, and there was no one present at the meeting to speak. The board did receive, however, a letter from a citizen that had, some concerns about the nature of commercial businesses in that particular location. So a motion was taken for a vote, and that motion was for 2 members voting for the rezoning and 2 members voted against the rezoning. So since we did not have 5 people, there was not a majority, so the motion failed. And the objecting members' reasoning was that they did not feel that the majority of allowed uses within the general business district would be suitable and appropriate for this area. Staff recommendation was for denial as well because of the lack of details on the rezoning and because of the area. I'm happy to answer any questions that you gentlemen may have.
All right, gentlemen, questions for Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I have several. Scott, I think that part of the animosity of the neighbors down there is a carryover from the big to-do with the chicken houses being built on there, and it took several of us commissioners and the county manager and I don't know who all to finally convince them that the county has absolutely nothing, the Board of Commissioners has absolutely nothing to decide where chicken houses go in the state of North Carolina. That is all handled by North Carolina state government, so mostly out of the NC State College. But several questions I did have. You made reference to the access road being 30 feet, but it would not be a hindrance to do the type of business this guy's intending or was wishing to do. Is that correct?
Well, we don't know what standard he's going to build the road to. Would it just be a lightly gravelled road? Would it be a paved road? How wide would the road be? And that types of things. How would it adjoin the existing highway? So we don't have any way of knowing what he's proposing.
During that hearing process, the size of the building, was it ever discussed?
I'll have to refer to Peter Minter on that.
The applicant said the building would not be very large, maybe 4,000 square feet. He proposed just, I believe, family members, maybe 3 people working in the building.
That was my next question. How many potential employees? About 3?
Right.
This guy's daddy and I went to school together, and that has no relationship on this, just to show you, to tell you that I'm familiar with almost every inch of that property in and around where this is being proposed. And I guess, you stated twice in the information that the rezoning is consistent with Burke County's 2016-2030 Strategic Land Use Plan. And, the question I have, if, these boys and one girl has inherited that property, and what else can be done with that property that would, make it a useful or profitable property for this inherited property that they've got. And he is doing the work that his dad did. He is continuing to work in new furniture upholstery, and they're quite good at it. So, what else would be suitable to go in there if you could make a suggestion to this homeowner?
I'll be happy to make a suggestion. So, since they asked for a general business district, my recommendation would be, we have 18 months that we can still do the conditional zoning districts. My recommendation is for them to do a conditional zoning district based on this specific business with the protections in place and the existing buffer and that kind of thing. And I think they would be able to move forward. The problem is, under general zoning, you're not allowed to ask really many questions or any questions of the standards that somebody wants to do, because all we're supposed to look at during the general rezoning process is this a good idea or fit in the neighborhood or not? And that's pretty much it. And we can't really get into all the questions of details. Sometimes those things, change the meter of what we want to do. So my recommendation would be that this be a conditional general business rezoning, but that's not what the applicant asked for.
What would that allow him to do?
I'm sorry?
What all would that allow him to do?
The conditional zoning?
Yeah.
It would allow him to do this exact use that he's requesting. And when you do a conditional rezoning, he could also say, I would also like to request to be able to do this, and this is how I will do it. And you can put stipulations on how that's done to protect the surrounding neighbors and properties.
If he wanted to split the property and put two houses on it, is that allowed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I had.
Scott, you said the conditional use rezone is going away in 18 months?
That's right, yes, sir.
So,
It's going away now as ordinances are revised.
as they're revised, and so just for future use, reference, when they're redone, we're still gonna have controls in place.
We'll have new types of controls.
And so are they gonna be more comprehensive or less comprehensive in nature?
Some will be less and some will be more, is the answer. It
Okay.
depends on the specific type of use, and it depends on what we come up with as standards during the rewriting of the zoning ordinance. And so when Pete does a site plan review, we will have more specific standards in place. But it will not allow for arbitrary members of a board to say, I don't like that applicant, so I want him to do this, 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 and this. So I think that was in mind when the laws were recently changed over in the legislature.
Okay, thank you.
So Scott, was the applicant, though he didn't come out with a conditional use application to start with, has he been apprised to that? Is he amenable to change, or do we know the status of that?
So his meetings were with Peter Mentor, so I'll refer to him.
That was asked or proposed at the very beginning, and he elected to go with the straight general zoning district request. So that's what he went ahead with, and that sort of is staff's issue with this, is that under general zoning, there's 100 different uses that could be established on that property if the rezoning was approved as is. And this proposed use of the land might not be that bad, especially with 3 employees, but we can't hold them to that. He could open a convenience store or any number of businesses there under general zoning. That's the main reason staff had a problem with that.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot the whole reason I went through the chicken houses illustration. We did successfully through the North Carolina Agri State Committee and through boards of commissioners, we did get the boundary expanded from 500 foot to 1,000 foot. You can't build a chicken house within 1,000 foot of anybody's property. 2-acre piece of property would never have a chicken house, a commercial chicken house on it. And I think that lady's letter is the reason I went to the extreme to look that up. That lady's letter who was complaining about a chicken house and that smell would be across her road, it would be impossible to get a permit to build a chicken house on that 2-acre piece of property. Thank you.
What's controlling that, Maynard? What law? It's not a law. Is that through insurance or what?
So that is the new rules, accept or to, it's no use for you to file for a chicken house if you don't have 1,000 foot to your next door neighbors on any direction or any.
But it's not under state zoning law.
No, it's not it's a state permit law. If you get, to build a chicken house, you have to have a state permit, not a county permit. So it's from the states.
And I think also the family that has the chicken houses, this is a same family member, I think a brother to the, so the people know that family and they had those concerns.
I don't think that would either also meet the distance. That would meet the distance and requirements from how far you got to be from a church. I'm not sure, but I don't believe it would qualify. But anyhow, the point is, the lady doesn't need to be concerned. He wasn't wanting to put a chicken house there anyhow. That's just one of those fears that's become, that's in place down there from previous chicken houses being built.
So Scott, if the applicant came back with a conditional use request and that was approved, is there anything to prevent the applicant from later on, 10 years down the road, this, I want to change this, coming back with some different conditional use request or some other request?
Well, it wouldn't be allowed, right? After 18 months?
Right. If he went back, he'd have to restart the process for a conditional rezoning. He'd have to start over again. But if he did that and that conditional zoning was approved, then under conditional zoning, the board could put certain limitations and conditions upon the approval, where with this current general zoning request, you can't do that. So the board could say, the only thing you can do here is this upholstery business, and he couldn't do any other of the 100+ uses that are in the table under general business. But if he, if that didn't pan out or it ran its course, if he wanted to come back to do another rezoning, he could do that. But if the conditional zoning is no longer in place under state statute, then he'd have to apply for a general rezoning again.
But there's going to be some kind of state zoning out there. I mean, it's not just going to disappear.
Right, that's right. They're only taking away the conditional zoning opportunity. They'll still, and they're taking away conditional use, and that becomes special use, right?
Special use, right. So
For
all special
terminology.
use requests would have to go through the Board of Adjustment. This conditional rezoning the problem the state has with it is that it's a legislative decision, but you're putting conditions upon a legislative decision. That normally falls under the quasi-judicial decision-making process, and so they're saying the two shouldn't be together. So they're taking that out of rezonings, and anybody that wants to do a special use or conditional use request would have to go through Board of Adjustment only.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one parting question. Scott, there's nothing he can do to avoid paying that $650 fee again, is that correct? Is there anything he can do or change on this?
To do the
what you're
conditional rezoning, the board could recommend sending it back to the planning board, I believe, for reconsideration as a conditional zoning request. But then it'd delay him on how long it takes, but I believe that would be an appropriate action.
Well, there's some parts of the conditional rezoning process that he hasn't done yet, so he'd
Right.
have to go back and hold a community meeting himself in the area and things, and that he'd have to have a site development plan and things. That he hasn't done any of that. So
He would have to do more things to do it, but it could be done. So I guess if someone's faced with the decision of something being directly turned down, or I have to do more things to get it approved, most of them will do more things.
Well, I haven't talked to the individual.
I
My
can't
guess
speak for
is
you,
I will. Sooner or later. Thank you.
Any other questions? Peter, there was a motion made by this board, by the planning board to, well, let me read, because I'm in charge of the board president. They made a motion to approve the rezoning request. Did they make a motion to deny the rezoning request?
they did
Why
not.
not?
I'm not sure why the board didn't. It was a 2-2.
I think we've been through this before with this, understanding that only 4 people showed, 7 people on that board, right?
Right.
7 people on board, 4 people show up. I think we've been through this before, and I think I don't want to say that I had displeasure with this, but I think there was a motion made to approve, it didn't approve, and then there was no motion made to deny, and they want to recommend to us to deny. This board has things that they have to do, okay? And I don't feel like that they did what they were supposed to do on this by not taking a vote to even deny, so we can say we had 2 that motion to approve, 2 that motion to deny. So you give us an opportunity maybe to send it back and say, let's take a look at this, with some more eyes.
Yeah, that's always been a tough thing. When you make a motion to deny, you're saying, yes, I vote to deny. It sort of, I know what you're saying,
And they have
but
been instructed on that.
They have been instructed?
They have been clearly instructed on that.
Okay.
On more than one occasion. When we're in the planning board meeting, it's hard sometimes to say this is what you're supposed to be doing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, but we turn around and we get a recommendation for us, it's just kind of like it's passing the buck on up to the board,
Right.
when I don't feel like they actually did what they were supposed to do by not making a motion per se. So, Scott, you feel like we do have the authority to send this back to you or back to the board?
I think you have the authority to send it back to the board for reconsideration and for a clear recommendation, if that's what you want to do.
That's what I'd like to see, because I'm not quite sure what the guy
I'd like to
really
ask
wants to
you-
do, since he didn't turn any plans into you under what I read is, it just, I want to do a business, there's no specifics about anything. Mr. County Attorney, is that appropriate?
I think that would be appropriate under the circumstances. That's the feeling of the board.
Gentlemen, do y'all have a thought on what I just said, or would you rather it just go straight on to the agenda? Anybody got a thought on that?
Is that something, JR, that we can do here, or does it still need to come to
I
our
think it
regular
would have
meeting for?
I think it would have to come to our regular
Regular
monthly
meeting,
meeting,
okay.
and at that time be sent back to the planning board.
And I think that the applicant would also have to, agree to that as well. I mean, he'd have to hold that community meeting, get a site plan.
Well,
and
that's only if they're asking for conditional zoning, but if they're asking for a clear recommendation from the planning board, then he doesn't have to do anything.
Right, I think you'd be sending it back to the planning board for a revote.
Yeah.
With an odd number of people there.
So we're talking about a revote, I was thinking personally, we have the ability to send it back, because I'd feel not comfortable with the way it's done now. I'd feel more comfortable if we had a say in that, and we get specific plans and send it back and say, you need to do the conditional use.
Can we send it back with the recommendation that he can consider changing his application to conditional use? Is that something we should or could do?
Mr. Chairman, I think our direction should be that includes part of what Jeff's saying, that they go over every option that he possibly has, and including the fact that if you can't come up with an agreement of this one, when he comes back, he has to pay $650, isn't it? $650 over again. But I think that's an excellent conclusion from the board. At this point, the applicant is not part of this board's decision. Only your zoning board and this board is part of this decision. And I think that's a good response to, I'd just like to give him, if he's going to bring business to our town, county, and employees to our county, and if there's not a real strong legitimate reason why he can't, then why can't he, is the question.
Okay, JR, you're saying that I'm gonna have to go ahead and take this to the regular meeting, and then we make our recommendations from the regular meeting and make everything kosher, right? Okay.
Right, and like Mr. Britton said, you can do that
Yes, okay.
with your own set of recommendations going forward.
All right. I want to belabor this just a tad further. Scott, I want you to meet with the chairman of this committee and express our desires that if there's any way they can find out that they don't have four people in the meeting, let's at least have an odd number so we can come through with a vote with some clarity on it. I would certainly appreciate that on behalf of this board. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out that I have that ad scheduled to run, I believe, in Thursday's newspaper for the public hearing. It requires that it be run in 2 consecutive weeks.
So we don't have to run the ad, though?
No, I think you have to have your public hearing.
You want to go ahead and do the public hearing also?
Right, and then
Okay.
You should make your
I
decision.
got you. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, your decision might change based on what you hear at the public hearing.
Good. Are all of us clear on what we're doing? Good, fantastic. I just want to make sure everybody understands. All right, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, moving on to items on the consent agenda. The first one is the Blue Ridge Community Action Community Service Block Grant for 2021. Miss Mary Wright from Blue Ridge Community Action will be here to present that. Miss Mary?
Good afternoon and Happy New Year.
Hey.
Blue Ridge Community Action intends to apply for the continuation grant, which is the Community Services Block Grant. The purpose of this grant is to help low-income families and individuals become self-sufficient by helping them find jobs, locate housing, obtain shelter, have food, obtain access to health care, and take care of their children. This grant application is due to the Office of Economic Opportunity in Raleigh on February 14, 2020. The funding level for this grant is $490,821. This represents a $49,427,000 increase from our current year's funding. With the increase in funding, we're proposing to add additional staff and increase direct services to families. The service area for this grant is Burke, Caldwell, and Rutherford County. We're proposing to continue the two components of the grant that we currently operate, which is information and referral and case management. Through our information and referral program, we're proposing to serve 150 families and 40 families through our case management program, with 5 of those families increasing their income to where these families move above the poverty level. Again, this is a continuation grant, and stipulation of the grant submission is that we get county commissioners' action to acknowledge the receipt of the grant that we will be submitting. And this grant application will go before our Blue Ridge Community Action Board of Directors for approval at the January 27th meeting.
All right, you've heard Mayor's presentation. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple. First of all, I'd like to repeat a statement that my grandma Taylor was known for saying, and she said, never refuse a free meal, because if you do, one day you're going to show up hungry. So it's obviously I'd want to support our efforts to get this money. I do have a question or two about the cost to execute this program. Is on page 173, and it says $424,707, which only leaves in round figures $64 for the program. Is that generally the way it runs? Is that accurate, in other words?
No, that must be an error. That must be a typographical error in there. But let's see what you're talking about. The expenditures will be $490,821.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
I said the full expenditures for the grant will be $490,821.
So this cost, part of it comes from somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera?
What you're looking at. That program cost may not, but it should be $490,821.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is kind of irrelevant, Mr. Chairman, but I did notice some of the numbers of employment and how many, what's the population, et cetera. Some of those didn't match the ones that was listed in the Board of Health's report, but I don't think it's significant to make any difference. But it's just, we really tend, and the reason I say that is from Maynard and the board's benefit is that it gets a little frustrated when I think of all the programs that we have participated from every direction you can think of, and tax dollars and grants given to people to come in here. And we're sitting with just in a few hundred of the same employees that we had in 2014. And you just wonder sometimes, well, is this worth it? And I know this program is worth it. Y'all are doing a good job. Your results are good. And I appreciate the application, and I hope you get it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mary? Okay, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Mary. Moving on to item number 2 is the Board of Commissioners' refusal of real property at East Burke Middle School for fire and rescue substation. Gentlemen, we do have a resolution that was passed by the Burke County School Board, and I want to read one section of that resolution. Whereas the Iker Township Fire Rescue Incorporated has requested to lease a portion of the East Burke Middle School property from the Burke County Board of Education for the purpose of constructing a substation thereon to provide fire protection to the area, including East Burke Middle School. So what we've had is Iker has made petition to the school board to give them a portion of that property at the school to do a station. And as indicated in the following resolution and accompanying exhibit, before real property located at East Burke Middle School can be leased to Iker Fire and Rescue for a substation to provide protection, the county, us, officially has to refuse that property. In pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 115C-518 that says the Board of Education shall offer the property to the Board of Commissioners at a fair market price or at a price negotiated between the two boards. And if the Board of Commissioners does not choose to obtain the property as offered, the Board of Education may dispose of such property according to the procedures as herein are provided. I've spoken with the county manager at length and others. I don't think that we believe the county has any need for that property down there, and it's before us to discuss to formally decline the Board of Education's offer of that 1.88 acres of real property located at the intersection of Middlebridge Road and NC 10 as presented. Keith Lawson, if you'll come up right quick to the table in case anybody has any questions. I will bring Keith up, gentlemen, to let y'all, if you do have any questions about this, Keith will be happy to answer on behalf of the schools.
Afternoon.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Keith, it looks like you have a prepared lease of sorts. Is the intent to lease this property or to sell the property to the fire department?
As I understand it, the intent is to enter into a 50-year lease agreement.
Why would the fire department and the schools not be best off to part ways altogether with that piece of property?
Well, I apologize, I don't have an answer to that. There were discussions with our Board of Education, of which I was not involved in, as to this particular agreement and how it came into being.
Mr. Attorney, would you have an opinion on the fire department leasing versus purchase?
Well, excuse me, not really. A 50-year lease takes you probably beyond most people in the room. I guess they're foreseeing that sometime in the future demographics could change such that there would be no need for a fire department there, and they would want to use that property for some other purpose if the East Burke school is still there. So looking 50 years in the future is a hard task for anyone, but for our purposes, there's no practical difference between a 50-year lease and a deed of the property. It'd be simple.
Yes, I kind of go back to building a multi-million-dollar school on property that we didn't own.
Yes.
So why would the fire department do the same? I guess that's kind of where I'm headed with it.
Mr. Chairman, our board attorney also had looked at this and other situations where they had had the same kind of transfer to other municipalities, that type of situation. He felt like this was the way to go, that this had happened, and he went the 50-year lease, which they've done in other areas of the state, and it's worked out well for them. We got that recommendation from Chris Campbell.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're getting the cart before the horse here, and Mr. Lingerfeld is here. Appreciate you being here. And don't we already have a property for a second fire department? It's off of Mount Harmony Church Road.
Brad, you need to come up front so we can get you on the record. Ms. Kay will not let me get by with that.
Yes, we do. About 20 years ago, we purchased a piece of property there at Mount Harmony Church Road and Eichard Rotius Road. The problem we're seeing with that property today, we're not sure if it's going to perk for sewer. And location-wise, you're familiar with Mount Hebron Avenue. We've got a dozen houses, properties, across the dam. I'm sure Maynard knows where this is. That's actually outside our 6-mile response limit. So by moving the property or the station to Eichard and getting Eichard back in Eichard Township, it will bring those folks into that insurance coverage.
Well, you know, I'm gonna tell you what I think on this, and you can kick me behind him, we go out and we'll still be friends, I'll say.
We'll be.
I feel like we're getting, you know, before I voted, when we vote to give a piece of property for a designated purpose, we have in fact already agreed that that's what we're gonna do. And we don't have a plan, we don't have a cost, we don't know what kind of money it's gonna take to build it. And you gotta remember one thing, folks, only the people in Eichard Township will be paying the fire tax to build that stuff. And we don't know how much it's gonna cost to do that. Do you know?
I've got an estimate, but until we've got property, I'm not gonna pay an architect and several engineers to give us exact figures.
Yeah, and the other thing that has been brought to my attention time and time again, not on this property, but on the one at Mount Harmony, that you could be to Mount Harmony in 6 minutes. You can probably be to this location in 6 or 7 minutes, running 40 miles an hour. And there's been no needs assessment done, whether there is legitimate reason to spend this kind of money on a second location for Eichard Township Fire Department. All of you know that west of us in 5 miles is Lovelady 2, is that correct? Lovelady 2. If you go a little bit north, you got Drowning Creek, you got George Hildebrand, and then if you go, I guess you'd call it northeast, you got Longview Fire Department. And I think all of those can be reached by, I think we've got enough coverage for fire departments, and we don't need to lay out $2 or $3 million for another fire department, I don't feel at this time. And if I had my ruthers, I wouldn't put it in either one of those locations. I have another place that I think it would be better suited, but they have the fire department, they have a board, they can bring recommendation to us, and we ought to take time to listen and see if it'll work or whatever. But I feel like, I don't see any reason why Burke County can't give or lease on 50-year lease to them, but without you and I hardly accept it. Because I'm afraid if we say to ourselves, yeah, let's do this, then we have agreed to things that we don't even know. Can't even imagine what the expense of it's going to be. And I think it's just smart to at least get those figures and see the plans and the timetable to pay it back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know I'm fighting for the taxpayers. That's because they're really are the ones who really end up carrying the load for everything this board does, and we don't need to be abusive with it and take on projects we don't need. End of story.
Other questions or comments?
Couple of things. I know we've got fire stations on 70 throughout the county. The Department of Insurance rates each of those fire departments as 1.5 miles from a fire engine, which normally sits in a fire department. you get a 1.5 mile credit. If you've got 3 miles to your district line or 3 miles to the next fire station, you don't get credit for that water supply that's in place. Ideally, if we had fire stations a mile and a half apart, we get 100% credit for that water system, but we don't now. And where that ISO rating comes in is enhancing reductions on your homeowners and the insurance premiums that our industries are paying, more so with the industries. We had talked about that property for several years with the former chairman, Randy Burns, with the school board. And, due to having 3 schools in that immediate area, fairly large rest home, great access to Interstate 40, which we're running daily. Johnson Bridge Road, Miller Bridge Road, those are pretty high volume areas, in our response district.
Your territorial Johnson Bridge Road,
It's across the bridge about Carolina Associated Mill Road, if you're familiar with it, about a 1/2 mile on the other side of the bridge.
but still, that's, 6, 7 minutes for your folks at 40 miles an hour. You can be there.
And hopefully, we're not looking at 2-3 million. Hopefully, we're looking at something similar to our last EMS base we built, maybe Station 6 out Miller Bridge Road area.
Well, that would go a long way, knowing, the low, the high, what's it gonna cost to do this?
Mm-hmm.
With me and my decision process, and being able to look at my neighbors and church members and say, this is why.
Right.
That's, I think you'll agree that the Bible says before you begin a project, count all the costs.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have enough money to finish it. And that is as good of advice that anybody can take in any project, including some of our grand projects of our service people that ran out of money, and it's trashed because it's out of date before they got it built. So
I feel like our board's got a pretty good handle on what we're looking at.
Yeah, and I'm not questioning that and whatsoever. I'm just saying for this board to be able to know,
Right.
to make a smart decision, I just feel like it's good advice to get this information.
One thing our board liked too was we did have the high school, middle school, elementary school. We had access. If something did happen, hope it doesn't, but if it did, we'd have access to these guys that'd be close by and could be there in a matter of minutes for us. So.
Yes, I recognize it'd be a big asset for the schools. I agree with that.
Ms. County Attorney, before you start, and you're probably going to answer my question, okay? Before us today, the resolution has already been passed by the Board of Education to enter into a lease agreement with Iker Township Fire Department. By statute, the only thing that's in front of us today is, does the County of Burke want that property, or does the County of Burke not want that property? Can you expound further on that?
That's correct. If the County of Burke doesn't want the property, then there's no need to do anything else. If the County of Burke does want the property, they can either vote to accept it or ask for more details, because it's supposed to be a fair market price, and there was no price in the resolution. But unless the board has interest in the property, they're just being asked whether they want it or not.
All right, gentlemen, that's what, as I read this, and I appreciate all your comments, Maynard, we're just being asked, do we want the property or not?
Mr. Chairman, I understand that, and unless we come up with the language with this giveaway that says something to the terms of, this is not endorsement of a plan or an agreement from this board to supply anything else than that we are are declaring to the school board that we don't have any intended plans or use of the property.
Is that something, I mean, we can't even get involved up to it in that point. If we don't want the property, we just need to leave it on the consent agenda. And we don't dictate an agreement between the fire department and the school board. That's between those two entities. That has nothing to do with us. Where you're just asking us, do we want it? If we don't want it, we're not endorsing anything, we're not doing anything, we're just saying we don't want it.
That's right. The property has to be offered to us before they do
Sure.
anything with it.
No, I understand.
And we can either take the property or say we don't want it.
Any other thoughts on this from anybody? So Commissioner Taylor, do you have a suggestion of what you might want? I'm willing to leave it, I want to leave it on the consent agenda because I don't think we need the property. That's the only question in front of me is, do we want the property, yes or no? And I don't think the county really wants the property.
Well, it's not the only question, it's the only one on your package, but that's not conceived to be the only question. No, I do not feel good about voting this in and and it being considered an endorsement of things to follow. And I would not be in agreement with that.
Okay, I'm not endorsing what? This discussion is between the school board and Icord Fire Department. Under the statute says, do we want the property or not? And that's the only thing that I'm looking at that's in front of us, according to the county attorney, is do we want the property or not? It has to be offered to us, and I don't want the property. I've talked to the county manager, and we don't see any need for us to have the property, but by law, they have to offer it to us, and that's the only thing that's on this agenda. I understand where you're coming from, and that's an issue that needs to be discussed between that Icord Fire Department board and the school board. You agree with that or disagree?
No, I think it's, the way it is worded okay, except it's premature for me to also, in voting the way it is, it comes across that we have endorsed things to follow, and I don't like that. And I don't think this board would like that, as far as that goes.
So you, can I safely make an assumption that you object to this remaining on the consent agenda and you want it up for a vote?
Yeah, y'all can vote it in. I don't want to vote for it.
Okay, my question is, you're suggesting, by our rules, if you're objecting, we got to take it off the consent agenda and put it up for a vote.
Sure.
Okay, you want it on for a vote. Okay. All right, gentlemen, this will be pulled off of our consent agenda because we do have an objection. It will be up for a vote from this board to either accept that property or not accept that property. Okay? All right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our next item will be reappointment to the Library Board of Trustees. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request, it's actually two requests to reappoint Jenny Cook, seat number 8, representing the Hildebrand City limits for the Library Board of Trustees. Her term ended December 31st, and we ask that you reappoint her for a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2022. Also at your seats, I would call your attention to an application we received yesterday from Browning Ropefoot. She has applied to serve on the Library Board of Trustees for seat number 1 as a City of Morganton resident to complete the remainder of a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2021. And I would like, with your permission, to add that to this item since we're making an appointment anyway.
Any questions from Madam Clerk on these appointments? Or the addition of the new one? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk. Moving on to item number 4, Community Development, Fauna Flora Trail, accept an easement with Lake James Camping Resort. And that will be presented by Shane Prisby, our Community Development Operations Manager. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I have before you an easement for the Fauna Flora State Trail and Overmountain Victory National Historic Trails. This is the Benfield's landing area of Lake James. It is part of the easements that we brought before the board to pursue purchase of from private entities several months ago. Since that time, that this particular parcel has changed hands to Lake James Camping Resort LLC, and we wanted to, they are still excited about the trail coming through the property as an amenity for the campers and residents and and guests at the campground, and we wanted to bring it before you again to formally accept it. The survey and plat and everything was part of the original agreement to pursue the easements, and the filing fee would be paid from the Overmountain Victory trail money from Duke Energy and the comprehensive relicensing agreement.
All right, thank you, Shane. Questions for Shane?
No, just thank him for the free gift.
Amen. All right, hearing no other questions, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item number 5 from the Department of Social Services, the reappointment to the Child Protection Fatality Team, and that will be presented by Corey Fisher-Wellman, our new DSS Director. Welcome to the hot seat for the first time, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So the purpose of this is Julie Cosby was appointed to a seat in June of this year. However, due to some changes in her employment, she resigned that spot in September. And since that time, we've received an application from April Pope, who is a DSS supervisor and serves on the local emergency planning committee, to take over in her spot. So our request would be to remove Ms. Cosby's name from the roster, thank her for her time and service, and to appoint Ms. Pope to serve for the remainder of her term, which will end in April 2022.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard Corey's presentation. Any comments or questions? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 6 from the Fire Marshal, the appointments to the Local Emergency Planning Committee presented by Mike Willis, Fire Marshal. Hey, Mike.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a few changes that we need to make to our committee. We've had a couple people that wanted to step off the committee for a time, and we need to get those seats filled and replaced. We have 5 that are up for reappointment. Seats number 3, 6, and 9. Charlie Watts has retired, as most of you know. Matt Gupton has asked to step down, and so has Mike Long. We are hoping to add some at-large seats. Currently, our requirement from the EPRA is that we have a 15-member board, but there's no maximum to that. We're trying to get more community involvement and more business involvement in the county. So our next bylaw edition will come up next month when we meet to expand those number of seats up to more, pending the approval of this. Seat number 16, which we would like to fill with Steve Jenkins. He's the new safety director at South America, and all those terms will be for 3 years.
Any questions for Mike on these appointments?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have, to serve on this board, do you have to live in the county? I noticed 2 of them live outside the county.
Well, their role and importance in the job that they perform is really what we're after. So if that's a hard, fast requirement, we can go back and look at it. But
I don't know. I'm asking on this board. Many boards could have different rules, and I'm not well versed on that board's rules. So, and I'm not on that committee. So I just wanted to bring it to our attention that two of the people that's being suggested to go on this board do not live in the county of Burke. And I will follow up by saying quickly that the latest stuff we got from Western Piedmont Council of Government, the whole gamut is, it's amazing how many people live in Burke County, works in neighboring counties. And it's funny how many Catawba County people work over here. And I got to looking at that and saying, my gosh, what is going on? And it became aware of it very quickly. 3 of my children out of 4 don't work in Burke County, but they live in Burke County. So it's just a question, does the bylaws allow people who do not live here to serve on a Burke County board? This board, not every board.
Okay, he's got
Mr. Chairman, our code of ordinance does have a residency requirement, but we could add, request an exception to that provision to appoint these folks. We do that often for other folks. JCPC also has a number of people that, due to the nature of their position, we have to have them, but they live in another county. But we can add a residency requirement exception to the motion if that would make you happy.
Can you, excuse me, can we, they both work in Burke County. Can you add a phrase in your rules and either work or live in Burke County, which would not have brought the question up to me? That'd be up to y'all's board to do that. It wouldn't be up to this board.
Well, I sit on this board, and I have to admit, I haven't read the bylaws in a long, long time, and I don't remember what our bylaws say, and we can amend our bylaws, Mike, if we so desire to, because of the positions that some of these people hold and their expertise in the areas that they have, because this has been a hard board to get a lot of people on, and it's a very important board.
Yes.
So we can take a look at that, but for the purpose of this one, these appointments this time, we can waive the residency requirement. We'll make that part of the motion if it's okay with everyone.
I think we were just under the impression that it would fall under the county's, whatever the county.
Well, let's go back and take,
policy
when I go home, I'll take a look at our
Okay.
bylaws and see what it says, which I just don't remember.
Yeah, there's nothing in ours that mentions it.
Okay.
So I think we just defer back to the counties.
Okay.
Whatever they're.
Sounds good. Any objection to that? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 7 from the Fire Marshal is the North Carolina Viper and Burke County Emergency Management Agreement. Michael?
Gentlemen, we have a request from North Carolina Viper Maintenance Group. This is the guys that do the maintaining of the towers, not necessarily the mechanical part of the technical part of the Viper system, but they mow the grass, they keep the power on, they keep the things clean and up, and make sure the roads have access to them and that type of thing. And they're hard up for a place to store a little bit of their equipment. What they have is a small compact tractor, a zero-turn mower, and some hand tools, a weed eater, blower, that type of thing, that they have scattered in different places across the county because they're in the same boat a lot of us have been. They don't have a place to put it. They have requested for the past 2 years and plan to request again state allocation to have in each of their districts a facility to store this, but they have yet to been granted that funding. But until they do, they're looking for a good, secure place. I looked at their equipment. What they're looking at would take up the space of probably a pickup truck. So what I would like to do with y'all's approval is offer them a place in our building, clean out a place about that big for them to safely store and secure their equipment in it, per our agreement that you have before you, just as a courtesy because they've been real good to us. It's not going to cost us any more to have it there. There's no expense at all to us. And I think it will go a long way in partnerships with Viper should we need them in the future to help us. So.
All right, questions or comments for Mike? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to item number 8 from the Sheriff's Office will be approval of authorized signers for the inmate trust accounts, and that's to be presented by Sheriff Whistler. Sheriff?
Thank you, sir. We're just asking that the account signature card for the inmate trust fund be updated to reflect the personnel changes that we've made at the Sheriff's Office. Sue Hensley has been hired as the administrative technician for the jail, and she needs to be added as the authorized signer to the account. Greg Huntley and Brian Neef will remain as authorized signers since their respective duties of overseeing the jail and the Sheriff's Office finances have not changed. Captain Jeff Robinson will need to be removed as the authorized signatory since his duties no longer include the supervision of the jail.
All right, questions for the sheriff on this matter?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, doesn't have anything to do with your request, but just for my own information, what kinds of, are all these funds personal funds of inmates, or what kind of funds are we managing here?
I'll ask our finance guy or
come forward.
Margaret said she can answer this.
Yes, they're considered fiduciary funds that we hold in trust for those inmates. When they come in, any funds in their possession have to be deposited within this account, and we are required to disperse them if they buy commissary items or phone time or things of that nature, and then when they leave, they have to be dispersed back to them. They're required to be segregated from our other county dollars.
So every inmate has his own account or her own account?
If they have funds. There may be many that come in without funds. And funds are deposited by family members. At times, they can deposit electronically or at kiosks located in the lobby of the jail.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 9 will be our tax collection reports for December. Hello, Tax Department. Don't see anybody here. If somebody will make a phone call.
I've already emailed.
Ma'am?
I've been emailing them.
Oh, you've been emailing? It's the only way? Okay. We'll leave that report for a while, and let's move on to item number 6, our items for decision. Sheriff, we need to come back and talk about the inmate food services contract price revision. And bring anybody else if you need somebody to come, Mr. Neff or somebody if you need.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And I've got Brian Neef who can answer specific
Brian, you need
financial.
probably just come on up.
And then we got the point of the spear. If you get too far deep in the woods, that Greg can answer those situations. But after approval of the Airmark Correctional Services provided for inmate food, we realized that the contract did not include individual servings of juice. And we were not aware of that being the case because the downtown jail has those individual servings in the past. So when we realized that they did not provide that, and it was in bulk form, and Greg could answer this question better than I, but I think it's about 35 pounds to lug around, and you have to have cups, and you have to have something to roll it on. You have to carry it to the second floor. And our staff just really don't have enough time, and some of them don't have the energy to carry those big containers of juice. So far as effectiveness and efficiency and just manpower, we ask that Airmark provide us with the individual servings rather than have to pour in bulk. And that cost changed the price of the meal by 1.925 to 1.983, and we're asking that we pay that additional cost for the benefit of the employees at the jail to be able to perform their duties.
All right, questions for Brian or the sheriff?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question that I'd written down, and I answered it for myself while I was driving up here, but that question was, why don't we just do the bulk drinks? I assume the answer is, if I am a prisoner and I want 6 orange juices instead of 1, that they control the consumption amount individual serves?
No, it's really just a matter of efficiency and effectiveness in that you can just hand them the juice and be done with it. And Captain Huntley could give you specific examples, if you want those, of what problems. We actually tried this. We had the individual containers, but we tried it to see what kind of problems we have. So if you'd like to hear from Captain Huntley out of the horse's mouth the issues that we run into, I'll ask him to come forward if he wish.
Is there a survey or a record out there how many jails do the bulk? I think that was in our earlier information, but I forgot it. How many do the bulk or how many do the individual?
If I remember correctly, and Greg, you nod if I'm wrong, the majority of jails do use individual packets that you check.
I could see where it'd be immensely easier to do that.
So are we taking the meals to each individual cell, or are they eating at the common area?
Yes, we have to take them to the individual cell. And you can imagine pouring that juice and getting it into the pie hole with cups, how difficult that is. I think one of the things that we foresee is that they say that your finger was sticking in my juice when you gave it to me. They could say all kinds of things. And so with the individual packet, you just give it with the food itself. The packet's in there. It's much quicker, and there's less likelihood that you're going to have complaints from the inmates.
So are they always eating in their cell, or will they be eating some in the common area?
Yes, we always feed them in their cells.
Also, Sheriff, when the ones that have to go to court, they have to take their lunch. That's another big reason why you want the individual juices or whatever it is,
Yeah,
drinks.
absolutely.
Because, I mean, you can't really take bulk in a feasible way over to the court during the day.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's about $60 difference, and if we did the bulk, we'd probably have to hire 2 personnel to mop
Sure
and
would.
clean. And that is a month, right? The difference is a month, so.
Comments?
Well, one of the things, and this is the way that the sheriff and his staff is operating the jail, is the people stay in their cells. I'm not sure if it's like 20 hours a day or 18 hours a day.
Yeah, well, it's 2 hours a day we let them out.
Rotate out 2 hours a day.
And that lends itself to why they're feeding them in their cells for other security reasons that they believe are appropriate. I didn't know if you were aware of that.
Also, when we looked at that cost, even with the cost rising, it got nowhere near the next bidder in price anyway, so we're still at a very marginal cost.
Yes, there's
even-
significant cost if
Yes.
you move up to the next bidder.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on an items for decision, and we'll see y'all there. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much. All right, let's move back to our consent agenda. Danny has arrived with some tax department reports. Danny?
Mr. Chairman, before you move into that.
Yes, sir.
Why could that item not be moved under consent? Minimal dollars, $60 a month.
I think there's a contract that has to be signed with that, right, JR?
There is a contract that would have to be signed, but
It would be, you're
Is it
correct.
okay to move it to consent, or you rather?
yeah, if the board approves, sure, there's no reason to keep it on.
Gentlemen, you have any problem with it? I don't have a problem at all moving it to consent, or just,
No.
anybody else?
Because it is a contract, you are correct. It probably would be better to remain under consent, even though it's going to be a short, quick item.
Consent or decision?
I mean, decisions.
Okay. Well, I just stuck my foot in my mouth, didn't I?
And you've already approved the contract
Oh, that's right, we have approved
at
the
the last
contract.
meeting.
It's an amendment to the.
Yeah,
So it would
amendment to
just
the
be an
contract.
amendment.
So, all right, we'll leave it on decision. If that's what you so desire.
Contract's approved, let's move to consent.
I'm ready to move it to consent, but I want to hear 5 people say it's okay.
I'm fine with it.
So we got 4 fine with it.
That's okay.
We got a 5th one shaking his head. Okay, we're moving to consent on that. Thank you so very much. All right, Danny, we get you now.
All right, I apologize.
Tax collections, if we start up there at the top, we're looking at the property tax. We've got a levy of $44,886,848, of which we've collected 80.26%. Now, that's of the levy. When we look at the budget, we've got the current year tax budget of $48,070,000. We've collected 79.84% of that. Delinquent taxes, $650,000. We've collected 68.93%. Interest and penalties, $250,000 budget, and we've collected 66.85%.
Questions for Danny? All right, next report.
Okay, on the release and refund report, we have the release report shows $3,202.35. We had $172.64 that was rebilled with a net release of $3,029.71. And we have the refunds of $37.64.
All right, questions on the refund report?
Mr. Chairman, on page 1, underneath the amended listings, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disappear. There's no amended amount billed. And I guess my question is, since it wasn't amended, why was it zeroed? Those were total, are you referring to this one right here on first page? First page. Under release reason amended listing. Okay. You've got zeros instead of the amount after it was amended. What would be the? It was total release. It was a total release. Total release. Yeah. So is it in the right category? Yes, sir. Like it, if you're looking at the first bill, it says $109.06. And then the total amount released was $109.06. So there was no rebills on those. The only time that I'll put that something was rebilled is if, most of the time those happen whenever somebody changes, we have the wrong jurisdiction on something. So maybe we have Morganton on it and it should be Drexel, just for an odd. Well, to protect the innocent, I won't read the name, but all of it belongs to, one person. Yes, sir. And that was the question that. And if you'll notice, it's all. How could we have made a mistake on all of them, all of the listings? He's got one down there that's got a rebill amount. Okay. That is where somebody does not pay attention to their listing forms, the form we just sent out a week or so ago. And we keep listing it for them, doing what we call a discovery. And then once you go in and you start garnishing somebody's wages, attaching their bank account, something like that, they say, oh no, I don't own that anymore. I hadn't owned that. And so this gentleman has undoubtedly brought in proof that he got rid of that years ago. If he'd have told us years ago, then we would have not had bills that were not good. Thank you. You answered the question. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. And Danny, before you need to see me in the principal's office for a few minutes. I got something for you.
Yes, sir.
All right, gentlemen, I believe that concludes everything we have for today. Is there anything else that needs to be brought before the board? Let me remind you that we do have a special call meeting on January the 10th here in this room at 3:00 p.m. to discuss the Tourism Development Authority, TDA special meeting. Please make your plans to be here for that important meeting. Kay, have you sent out those packages? Packages have been sent out to you. If you have any questions or anything about those packages, please get with me or Kay or the county manager. Anything else? All right, hearing nothing else and without objection, we will stand adjourned until our regular meeting. Okay?